Hey, everybody, welcome to, I don't know why I said hey so funny. That was like, I always thought the lady was going to come on or whatever, but she doesn't come on anymore because I turned her off. So here we'll start again. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Creatives Ignite. Last time I had Bethany Heck on, well, the first time I had Bethany Heck on was in 2013, which was 10 years ago, Bethany. Wow. Thank you for believing in me way long time ago. And, to be able to come on the show. So then you came back on in 2016. I saw you speak at Creative South. You were literally stand-up comedian funny. You don't try to be, but you are hilarious. And she's brilliant. I have learned so many things just from having conversations. What Bethany did, how she's used the Library of Congress. That was something that I didn't know I could do. You taught me that. And then I started using that. And she just pushes the boundaries of type, which to me, her dad was my professor. I don't know if he taught me typography, but they're all teaching typography. Typography's and everything. So I have this imagination that Professor Heck, Ross Heck, her dad, was always like teaching her about typography. And at that point, when she got to college, she was like, I already know everything that they're going to teach you. And so then she was able to push boundaries. But I really had an idea, and I definitely think it was incorrect, that there were certain rules. And then, so this is why, to me, you are a huge influence on me, and I think so many others, is that you were willing, because they taught us, as you probably know, you probably knew, like when you were 5, you're like 2-3 typefaces max, right? In a piece, right? Your dad taught me that. And so, and I think that was a guideline as we were learning, right? But that so many of us never pushed past that learning stage. We thought that was like a end all be all. So Bethany, that was one thing that Bethany taught me. She's like, why? Look, and she did so much research, looked at all this old design and was like, this stuff works. Let's rethink some of these rules. And so it's helped me to rethink some of the type rules. So it's just 2 of the ways that I love Bethany, but I hope that you guys enjoy this one. This is Where Are They Now? So last we spoke was 2016. Lots have changed. You've moved around. You've changed companies. She helped IBM get out of one typeface on their website, right? Or their operating system in the thing. I can't remember what it was, but you were like, this isn't working. You can't use bold here and it's clickable and then it's not clickable. So there's so much that she's taught me also just in the way to look at UX in a piece. So Bethany, can you give them a little bit of an update on where you are physically and what you're doing now and maybe a little bit of the journey from 2016 on?
Sure. So in 2016, I was at Microsoft and I was in Seattle and I am still in Seattle. I had a brief excursion down south to San Francisco to lead design at Medium for a year, but didn't really care for San Francisco a lot. And so very quickly found ways of getting back up here and have stayed put. Seattle feels like my home away from home. I really love it here. And I am working still in UX, working in design systems at Smartsheet, which is like a program product management type of software, like running like Trello board. It's like a much more robust version of software like Trello boards and spreadsheets, and lets you like make plans and see when things are off track and set up all these complicated automations. And so it's this really like nitty gritty tool that people use to do their jobs, which is the kind of thing that I really like working on in day job situations, because it's really cool to know that like to have this sort of like weight behind what you're doing is like this impacts somebody's job and their livelihood, and so you have to make sure that you're making the right decision. And I really like that sort of responsibility.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that some people, and we had talked about this when we talked back in March, I think, or maybe it was February when we met. But we talked about sometimes that pressure of having, I think of you as a woman leader in design in our field, and especially in UX. And sometimes it is hard, whether you're a woman or not. It's just hard to make those as a creative, saying, hey, we need to make some of these changes. And that's been like a role you're like, you have worn with gusto. I think I don't think you are like, I'm putting this on, I'm going to do this for the good of everybody. I think you are doing it, but you're like, you're not going to let them beat you down just because it might be easier for them. You're like, no, this is better for the people who are using it, which I just love that. That's just in your heart, driven in, and you're like, we're going to make this better. But I do think sometimes it can be hard to be that, always be like, being the one that's breaking the trails and leading the path, because there is sometimes can be resistance either against creatives or just they may think of this as like a new field, but although it's not a new field, we just have a name for it now, I think. Do you feel like there's some resistance in?
Definitely. I think one of the things, though, that I would say that I've observed is that some of it is that companies are new to having big in-house design, and whether that's like all the different flavors of design, marketing design, graphics design, and UX design. But and so some of that is like the sort of machines that designers are operating in are a little bit less familiar with the practice of design. But I think designers are also a little bit unpracticed in working with other disciplines as well, whether it's, again, the sort of like marketing side of things, or with dealing with engineers. Like I'm dealing with a lot of my job or PMs. And so
what's a PM? Project manager?
A project manager,
okay.
Program manager. It's a very loaded acronym. And what that person in that role does at any given company is slightly different. It's usually the person who's like wrangling, like, okay, design, here's what you need to deliver and when, and engineering, can you get it done in time, and sort of like managing the little group of people.
What's hard about that is that somebody doesn't know, or their role is not defined, or your role is not as defined because it's newer in these companies?
I think that's it sometimes. A lot of times I think designers come in and we're very passionate. We care a lot about what we're doing, and we can like sort of like come in a little too hot, or sort of like come in with this perspective of like, I'm the only person here who can do this. I am the subject matter expert. And so I'm telling you that this is the way that it should be. And when you have resistance, and design is also unique, I would say, inside of companies, and that everybody has an opinion about what you're doing and how you do it. Nobody like is looking at the code that an engineer is building and thinking like, I wouldn't have formatted, or I wouldn't have written that code that way. They either don't have visibility for it, or but everybody has an opinion about design. And I think that that's a growth lesson that the discipline as a whole is learning, is that we are at both an advantage and disadvantage, and that like everybody is potentially a stakeholder and in our environments and for what we're doing, and everybody has an opinion. And we might sort of like weigh the value of those opinions differently, but that doesn't mean that we still have to sort of like navigate it. Just because you don't think it's valid feedback doesn't mean that the feedback doesn't exist. And I feel like we as a discipline are still like navigating how to operate in those spaces. And so I find a lot of times designers kind of get in this really bad headspace where they're just like, nobody's listening to me. I don't have the power. Design's not respected at the company. And some of those things might be true. All of the things that are causing you to feel that way are real. But I have seen positive like developments when they added like there's just more like I find that when design like makes the attitude or sort of like takes the effort to sort of like work very hard to contextualize what they're showing within the framing that the person who's going to be looking at the thing is. And so like I know that this person cares a lot about this. And so how do I take what I want to do and frame it in a way that matches what they want? And sort of like pitch in that way, I find that things get a lot smoother, and it's always different, and it's different when you're dealing with a bunch of people and all those things. But I do feel like growth is happening, and other people inside of companies are learning more about how to deal with designers, and designers are sort of building these muscles of like, okay, how do I like relate what I'm doing, instead of just sort of being like, yeah, I'm a design machine and I'm going to make design. Like sort of like taking in that extra context of the people that they're working with and shaping what they're doing around that.
I like it that you also are like, hey, it's the attitude of let's come together instead of let's fight against. So what makes it, I say IBM, but it wasn't IBM, it was Microsoft. That's just like everything other than Apple, I guess, is IBM for me in my brain. So my
They're all
fault.
different versions of the same thing.
So big company that is long, but I think that they do appreciate design. And then you've worked for smaller companies that were more growing, not and other things in between. Because if we're coming into a situation, whether it's a freelancer working in a company or somebody going into a new job, say it was a new created role, what would be some things that would be help the team or help the project to go? What would be some key factors like to look for, like, hey, this is what we need to work on to make this a good team? Because you've led teams. I mean, this is not like just Bethany against the world. It's you leading people and you getting them on board. And it sounds like that's what's been key, is that you're really serving the people that you're the customers, the customer's customer, but also the people that are in the room. You're giving them a voice as well. You're not just wiping them away and being like, I know what's right. So what would make a great working environment for somebody? And you can kind of look at this from what hasn't worked maybe at some companies and then what is working or what you think would work. Is that a question? I mean,
Sure.
That's not on our sheet, but
I think so.
Okay.
I see some questions in there.
Okay.
So when I'm thinking about like, how do I set up my team, like regardless of like what the makeup is in terms of designers, because I've led graphic design teams inside of companies too. At Medium, I did both UX and graphic design. So how do I set them up to have success? And from my lens, success is like they're able to solve problems with a degree of autonomy. They feel like they are owning the work, and they are growing like personally in their skills versus, some ways of managing people is to sort of like very much like say like, hi, I am interpreting the situation and this is like the sort of like endpoint that I think we need to reach to, and then you go execute on that. And I feel like that doesn't leave enough opportunity for learning and growth for the person. And it also is like very reliant on my lens and my perspective to sort of like that my version of what is the right solution is right. So I feel like my job is to know the landscape and the environment. So like, who are the stakeholders? What are the things that they're concerned about? Where are opportunities to sort of like latch onto things that are important to people and frame our work in the context of that? And so I want to like basically give like a packet like of this information, like as a sort of like general guide of like, I want you to go tackle this work. Here are the things that I know are like very important to some people. Here are the triggers that I know, like if we like delve into this like type of execution, like if in graphic design, it could be something as simple as like colors or, certain aesthetic choices, things that people really like or don't like. And then just, and let them go from there. And so I feel like it's my job to sort of like spend time with like everybody at the company, in addition to my team, like understand what does my person need, in terms of support and guidance and freedom and space and meeting schedule and all these types of things to feel like they're being successful. And then what do the people that we're doing this work for, what do they care about? How can I learn about things that are happening with users or customers of the company, that I can fold that information in? I see design as like a translation team. Like I don't see it as like design owns the like discipline of design, because if you get too fixated on like my job is to own the pixels, then when those types of like feedback come in where it's just like we had to make the logo bigger, we had to like switch out this photo, whatever it is, then you feel like you've sort of lost something. But I feel like if you have the perspective of like, it's my job to come up with the solution that I feel is best based on all of this like storm of information, and I'm valuing it equally. I'm seeing it not as like it's opposition, but more of like, okay, this person has this thought. Like, I don't necessarily agree, but like, what is the best path forward now that I've received this information? That if you get in that mindset, you can navigate a little bit easier. You can still feel like you've like been successful in the work, because I do feel a lot of like people's happiness in their job and seeing the design work as successful and not has to do with that like lens. It's like, is your view of success is like the thing that I first like proposed like went out like exactly as I designed it, like that is a version of success that feels great when it happens, but it's not usually realistic because of that reality of like everybody at the company has an opinion. And so if you're reframing success and like, we got something out, here are the things that I like learned and adjusted like to get this thing out, and here's what I'm going to try to do differently next time, like that can also be like super gratifying and lead to great work.
Okay, I love that. So is that something that was modeled for you, or is that something you had to make that own pathway? Like,
it's definitely from learning the hard way. I'm a very opinionated person. And so I had to learn the hard way, like coming in and being like, yes, I feel like I know a lot about this, and I still struggle with that. There's still times where somebody like shares a type opinion and they share it as fact, and it's very triggering for me. I'm just like, look, you want to talk about type? Let's go.
Which I brought my guns. Like right, I'm ready. But so
I don't like that about myself.
But there are lots of things that we are always working on that we are bringing to, and depending on the day, depending on what happened at home, the dog could have gotten out and you had to scramble in the morning, who knows? But it is all that stuff we bring to those meetings and to the relationships that we have at work. But it's about also knowing where we are not perfect, instead of so that's probably something that hopefully it's been modeled at least with one example in your life, in your work life. I hope, somebody that you either looked up to, or it could be somebody that's not even wasn't your direct report, but somebody that was like, wow, they're really taking time to look at everybody's whatever, or they say that, hey, they have a problem with this, or, sharing that. So I think you have done amazing in that way. All right. So San Francisco was a short trip, came back to Seattle. You have this beautiful house and you get to work remote. So working remote was something you had done prior to COVID, right? This wasn't new. In working remote, how do you build that team? Or because there's so many things when you are really trying to listen to other people in a meeting, you're taking in body language, and you are very receptive, because I've been with you in person, like you're amazing and you can read on people. So is that ever something that is hard to do in that remote setting? Because it does seem like you're skilled at it. Maybe you don't think that, but I don't know. Is that ever is being in a remote organization, does that make it harder or easier for you personally to make sure that everybody's being heard and you're listening and you're able to redefine success?
For me, I feel like it's easier. There are certainly some contexts where being remote is more difficult, like meetings, important meetings, particularly where everybody wants to be like heard and sort of like get the chance to speak up. It's hard to like sort of like, how do I make space for myself or for my team or for somebody else? So I feel like I have something to be able to say here. The etiquette can sort of like go a lot of ways with Zoom and other things. But in general, I prefer remote drastically. I like using Slack. I grew up using Instant Messenger. It's very natural for me. And I'm highly introverted. And so doing talking text space is much less stressful for me. When there are things where it's just like, ooh, I have I strongly disagree with what's happening here, and I need to figure out what to say, having that benefit of being async and sort of going up and taking a walk and figuring out okay, what's the productive and like, still get the intention across, but maybe with a little bit less of the unproductive emotion.
Or that initial
that kind of thing.
Right? Yeah, the reactionary. Yeah, that's super smart. I didn't think about that.
But I do find that there are some things that like were easier being in the same room, like when it comes to like, brainstorming and doing like inspirational things. Like I have a huge book collection, which I can't really share with people in the office in the way that I used to be able to do. That kind of hands-on show and tell, like everybody being in the same space and sort of looking through things. And there's ways that I found to do it, like, doing Zoom calls where we just, go through and talk about stuff, and doing big Figma boards where people, sort of like group and paste in and sort of do quick share outs of things that they're finding inspiring. But yeah, it's overall, like it's been a blessing. It's always been the way that I've preferred to work. And I'm really grateful that it's become like an easier thing. It's been much easier to find jobs that are remote friendly post COVID.
Yeah, for sure. Amen on that. Okay, so Jared had a question earlier, and he said he would love to hear about how / why you moved from more traditional graphic design into UX, if that was the actual path you took. But it does sound like you've done UX and then you've gone back to managing some designers that are doing more traditional. Can you talk about just that, why and how you moved? And
sure.
Okay.
So my like initial interest in design, both like in high school, before I went to college, was through web design. Actually, I had access to things like Photoshop and Dreamweaver through my dad because he was a professor and had the tools on our machines. And so I got really into like anime and video games, and I would make fan sites and build things and do horrible things in Photoshop with like Zelda art. And, just that was how I taught myself my basic skills. And so my framing, like going into college, was that like I wanted to be less like a graphic designer, but more web design was what I was interested in. My dad very much did not want me to be a graphic designer. He said, it's very competitive. You'll never make any money. He begged me not to do it. And so I actually started off in horticulture.
I almost did horticulture, Bethany. That was my major because I like to be outside more. Anyway, I didn't do horticulture, obviously. Anyway, keep going. But you showed him. You made money as a graphic designer.
I did. I threatened to go to Full Sail and do their web design program. And he was like, if you're going to do design, you're going to do it here. And so he finally acquiesced and gave me the sort of like thumbs up, his blessing to try to get into the program.
You were way past me. I don't remember when you graduated, but you were. I graduated in 96. I should have graduated in 95, but I extended it out because I like football. Not that I extended it to watch more football. That was just a benefit. So when I was at Auburn, there wasn't any, I was the only person using Macromedia Director, and I had this idea for this thing, and they were like, well, you're going to have to teach yourself. And I'm so glad they did that because that's how the real world is. We have to teach ourselves everything all the time. So if you really want to learn it, then it is really good. You had lots of time as a kid to play and to explore and make crazy Zelda things and things that you would cringe now maybe, but it was about playing. It wasn't so much about the tool. It was more about, hey, there's this playground. So was there like a web design track at Auburn at that time? So you kind of made your own way that way as well?
Yes. I was able to take some classes with Wei Wong on web design. And that's actually how the end grain, the web, I don't know if anybody here ever visited the end grain when I was posting to that, but that was how that project got started. I still run into people who like do not know that I ran that website and are familiar with it, and they'll be like, wait, what the, like you did that. Chris Soursby, who runs Klim Type Foundry, like did not know that I ran that site, and it came up at some point recently, and he was like, how have I known you this long? And I didn't know that. Yeah, so like learning like the rules around like these are the good typefaces, like here's what, like the more traditional, and as you know, Auburn's a fairly like formal modernist driven graphic design program. And so that was a huge change for me, like used to being like defont.com and just sort of like, what's expressive, like what feels like it has energy to it, and learning, a much different way of setting type. And so I think that taking the learnings from that, and then also sort of like never losing my love for like vintage and old things and, things that did have different flavors of typography is sort of like what ended up shaping my perspective on typography in general. And I very much like still remember how frustrated I felt in those early type classes of being so limited, and sort of needing to put myself in the lens of like, okay, my teacher is expecting this, and so I need to give them this to like be successful and to get through. But like I hated being in design school, and I was kind of like at a point where I was just like, I've left horticulture, I'm into graphic design, like maybe I've made a mistake, I don't know, but I have to just see this through. It just felt like, well, you've made the decision and go on. And so a lot of the things that like me sort of processing, like, how do I find the love in this has come out through typography. But to get back on the like UX track, like the interest in web, like sort of grew into UX. And I've had jobs where graphic design and visual design has been more of a foundational part of the work. But the thing that I've learned about myself is that feels like very much like a personal artistic expression for me. And I don't like doing it for other people. Like, I don't love doing freelance. I like doing it for me in the way that I want to do it. And so, like, I use things like the EFIS League and the Font Review Journal and all these other types of tools as my outlet for that. So I can, when I'm doing it, like, I can maintain my love for it, because I really found that trying to do it in the context of a job or for clients, like, really kind of like sucks the joy out of it for me.
Well, and I think that is really important for us to know. Sometimes we don't get that insight until we've already, the joy's sucked out, right? So I think that knowing that, because you've the EFIS League, I put the link in, it started as your senior project, it grew, and you've done other things with it, but it is beautiful. You guys should check that one out. And then Font Review Journal is something that's happened since 2016, right? So when did that, tell us a little bit about that. And if you want to show us those images, you can, if, whatever, you take the screen whenever.
I think I have everything on my machine now, so I could screen share if you want.
And typography, was that something that always kind of brought you joy, or was that something that was it something that you came to love later, like as you were studying in school? Do you feel like you always were attracted to type and more, or I don't know?
I think even before school, I can't illustrate, and I'm not much of a photographer either. And so if I love making things and, the sort of like practice of that. But like, and so if I'm going to make anything of any interest, I have to figure out how to do it with words and through typography. And so the writing and the practice of type has sort of like come through that, and loving just some of the physical objects in the history of letterpress, which is how Ingrain got started, and sort of growing a collection in that, and learning about type history and development through that has also been a part of that. And the sort of like interest in type history and wood type has sort of led to projects like Job Clarendon, which is a typeface that I art directed and made with David Jonathan Ross, who some of y'all might know. This is the sort of research document that I put together as sort of the initial pitch to make that typeface with David. I found examples of old Clarendons. Condensed Clarendons are a genre of typeface that I have always loved, and I didn't feel like a lot of type designers were sort of translating them successfully into digital typefaces, and variable fonts felt like an interesting medium to try to explore that with, because with wood typefaces, so many, a lot of it is that, like, these are the same general idea of font, but they're probably like drafted by different draftsmen, just sort of like basing off of each other's work and trying to figure out like, okay, how do I make like a slightly thinner or smaller or less bold, or more condensed or wider version of the same typeface? And so variable fonts like fit very naturally into that idea. And so, sort of like pulled out, the things that I found were interesting and historic examples from Clarendon's. Like this is a block from my collection. I have a whole alphabet of that particular Clarendon, and so that became the sort of like guidepost for this work. Looking at other examples from other similar genres. These are some more from my collection.
This is you printing these or looking at these and then analyzing them, right? Seeing what.
Yes.
This isn't like you're going to the library and hunting out what other people have said. This is, I mean, maybe you did that as well, but some of this is just because you have studied so many older pieces of design that have to do with type. This is some of the stuff that I just find super interesting, and I love because you always teach me something new.
Sure. Yeah. I like all of these are from like specimens that I've like found either online, or a lot of these are from the Letterform archive where I requested scans. And yeah, just looking for trends. Like I made a note here of like a lot of Clarendons have this sort of like oval shape in their counterforms, and I think that it takes it too much into like a modern Didone style for the typeface. But then like too squared is also kind of like a little stiff. And so like trying to figure out like what the happy middle is there, and just sort of like grouping and comparing typefaces.
And if people don't know, the Letterform is it the Letterform archive or letterformarchive.org?
I don't know if it has, if it's officially, I think it doesn't have the in the URL. I think it's
just Letterform archive. Oh, Jared did it. Thank you. That's what I thought it was, but I wasn't sure, so I wanted to ask. But they'll do some things. I think they're in San Francisco, right? Yes. They're based there, but they do online things too. So I mean, I've gotten messages of online events that are from them, just so that people can, if they don't know, this is a great asset, great resource. Okay, keep going. Sorry. So you've found
a lot of these. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can keep talking about Java, or I can switch over to Font Review Journal. I love everything, so I'm all over the place right now.
So Alan says he has the opposite problem. He's not the best with type, and he still struggles daily. So, but I think sometimes you get better when you, like you were saying, hey, this is something I'm working on. I'm going to dive into this. What would be something that you would tell somebody like Alan that is a way that they could explore more and instead of just following the rules? Because I think, a lot of these were older things that worked. And it may break the rules we learned in school, which is some of the stuff that you taught me years and years ago. But what would you tell somebody? Like, how can they look at something like what you're looking at and then take it to the next level of improving?
So I really like thinking about this problem, because I find that like typically design advice tends to fall into like, well, if you are struggling with something or you really like somebody's work and you're trying to figure out how to develop your own style, you should start by mimicking other people. And I think that there's a lot of value in that. I know that there's also some people who are like adamantly against that and think that like there's too much things that are just driven by mood boards. I have this thing that I wrote for Medium, or I put on Medium a long time ago, where I took some of the like typographically driven works that I really like, and I tried to break them down and sort of explain like what I feel like from a structural standpoint are sort of standing out to me about them that make them effective. And so like talking about this poster from Jessica Spenson, looking at like how this large sort of 3D extended question mark, like the lines that it forms like end up hitting a lot of the lines in the grid that's typeset underneath it. And I find that there's details like that a lot of times we just don't see. We just see like the big picture idea of like, oh yeah, 3D type, and then we've got a grid underneath, and we just think like, oh yeah, okay. And then somebody puts like a big box of something up here and they set a nice little grade down there and you get like sort of the way there, but it's like an iceberg, you're not really understanding like the full like weight of the decisions that led up into that final result. And even like in a little bit looser, more expressive things, like looking at this poster from Eric, just the way that, figuring out like, okay, if I abstract this and look at it, like what sort of things am I seeing, and sort of seeing the rhythms and the shapes and the way that the types sort of like fitting in to each other there, and thinking about like, how can I sort of distill that down into a repeatable lesson for myself and the teacher.
Is that like an exercise you would do? You would find something out there and then abstract it with lines or shape?
Yes.
Oh, cool. That's a great exercise. And we all can get, and it's about like, what is working, what isn't working. I think that's one of your superpowers, and able to back away and say, what is working? How can I incorporate this element into what I'm doing? But you have to be playing with it. You can't just pop it out. I think there's something important about mimicking the masters. I don't think we should that's all we do is mimic people. I think but that's how we learn, is we do have to imitate to be able to understand, oh, this is how they got this, right?
Yeah. I think like my favorite, this post, this is another one from the same series by Jessica, but this is like my favorite poster to talk about when it comes to just like the difference in the way that we sort of like emotionally experience something for the first time versus like it's becomes very easy to miss the details. So like, I love this poster. This poster is like my favorite thing. And it's using a typeface called Maelstrom, which is by Chris Sowersby and at Clem. And, you've got this huge typeface and it's like creating this scaffolding in the middle of the page. And then you have the small type alongside of it. And if you look at like the usage of this typeface after this poster came out, like most people try to use it in the same way that this poster is. So like, I feel like in general, like people like see this, they're like, oh, I love this. That typeface is so cool. They set Maelstrom really big in black and white, and they're like, and they stack it like this, like really tight, and sort of like mimic the hairlines between the slabs. And they're like, done. I nailed it. I captured the essence of this poster. But if you break it down, and so I went through and like, this is what the font looks like if you set it and you left align it, and that's like, okay, so let's right align it and let's put that little tag in there and sort of like seeing where it's at. And it's just like, okay. But then if you like look and sort of like the end, so the blue is representing like her actual design, and the red is representing like what this like looks like when you just set it out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
You can like, when you look at the overlay, you can see that like she actually like modified the typeface a lot. She tucked in the R here to make room for this column. She removed the flags in a few places, including there. She's tucked in the 0 so it lines up here, and sort of made sure that the lines all throughout here like lined up exactly. And it's like this level of sort of like looking and observing and studying the work that our peers do that I think is super valuable. And it's something that it's always like interested and frustrated me about designers, that like this stuff is like the basics for like what we do. Like this stuff matters. And I feel like we look at like tiny JPEGs of things and we're just like, oh yeah. And then we like copy it like after that like blurred version of like not really even looking at it. And we move on. And then we're like really frustrated when people don't take us seriously. It's like, we have to take that. Like, I should be doing this with like anything that I look at and like, and I don't do it either. But I find that like when you're really looking at like great work, you will find and learn things like this that make you appreciate it in a whole new way. Like I already loved that poster more than I could say. And now I love it even more because I've taken the time to like break it down like this.
Yeah. And so you got lots of people in the chat. So Matt says the power of great type and why, and great design on an emotional level, why I became a designer years ago. And then Jared said, love that point. Need to customize. He says, what Draplin says, default is dangerous. And then Paul says, super valuable to do that kind of detailed analysis and reconstruction, especially in type. Awesome. And I just think that people are, when it is successful, we are just, we are devaluing the we're not looking at it like, oh, she probably adjusted this, or how much goes into all those little nuances, and just it's a grid system. She's making, or whoever made this made a, they had a structure to it. It was its own kind of structure, but I think that it's really powerful. But maybe we do need to analyze that. We want to be taken seriously, but right, like you're saying, we're not doing it like we should. So we can't give other people a hard time if they're not doing it for us. So we have to lead by example. That's again what you're great at doing this. Okay, so so this medium, you said you had told me one of the best ways for you, or your favorite ways to talk about design, was through your articles on Medium. And so are you still writing on that platform?
I haven't written anything in a long time. I have things like various drafts of things that I've poked at. I really needed to break from sort of writing and talking about it all the time. And I've also gotten really deep into a very long-term project, which hopefully someday happens, where I've been doing research for a book about Cooper Black.
You want to go ahead and take us to Cooper Black and tell us about that one?
So I get a lot of times I've had people ask me about like, oh, when you do things for Font Review Journal or sort of like write about type, like how do you sort of like keep track of, where do you find your things and how do you keep track of them? And like when I'm getting really into the weeds on something, I use this tool called Dropmark. And so it's basically like a Pinterest, and you can tag things. And this is the over 3,500 images that I have of in-use examples of Cooper Black. And then I can go in and tag things. So I can say like, oh, if there's a particular designer that used the typeface a lot that I find is notable, like Buddy Esquire, I can come in and sort of like, if I'm diligent about tagging those things as I add them, then I can sort of filter out. When I know the decade of something, I can filter it. I have gone through Discogs like decade by decade and found hundreds and hundreds of album covers cassette art and various things that use Cooper Black, and can sort of group them by decade.
So what is
I did this because I was really
Discogs?
Discogs is like a music database. It's like trying to like capture every like release of every piece of like music that's ever happened. It's like some big open source thing.
See, you always know these
an
things.
amateur.
Okay, so that's really cool. Okay, so then how did you find Dropmark?
I started using it forever ago because I've always been obsessed with sort of like, oh, I like this thing and I want to grab it. And I would just like loosely collect things in folders on my machine. And I was like, I want to be able to like share it more easily. I want to be able to do this sort of like tagging and filtering. And yeah, I found this, and I actually know the person who like developed this like through a weird coincidence, because I used to use one of his, I would ask him questions about a JavaScript plugin that he made a zillion years ago for like masonry tile effects on web like this. So I was able to sort of directly ask him for a few features like, oh, tagging. And then like, I would really like it if people didn't have to have an account and they could come in and like filter by those tags.
But this, just as a research project, this is huge help for you as you're out there looking. And I'm sure it's sort of like Pinterest too, where you can add your own photos in, but then you can also just or it's not a pin, but you would be taking things from somewhere else on the web. It would go, is that kind of how it works?
Yes.
Okay. So, but this would be amazing for doing research on this. So I would just love, this is just a Diane question. So say you're starting, you've collected all these things. When and how do you go in and start analyzing? Do you analyze it? Like, what does that look like in your brain? Like, is it for success? Is it for, I would just love to know your thought process. This is probably a longer question than we have, but.
That's a good question. I'm always just I'm trying to like the process usually switches for me of like, okay, I'm just sort of like looking for like this thing. What is the thing that matches my thing? and sometimes, and a lot of times it means like looking in ephemera areas, or sort of like, let me find an example of something. So like if I go into the ephemera tag, looking in like a sticker archive, and sort of like, I'm not looking for like Cooper Black stickers. I'm just like looking at the thing because I know that I'm going to find Cooper Black in here somewhere.
Right.
And so I like make little goals like that for myself of like, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole today. And then like, there's usually like things that sort of like pop up that's like, okay, I like immediately know like what I would want to say about this, or like I'm seeing connections between something that I found it over here and it relates to this thing over here, or
because do you have kind of a photographic memory where you're able to be like, ooh, this was like this, but you're able to kind of see it in general, like overlooking the whole landscape, and then you're able to see patterns, multiple patterns?
I don't think I'm a very visual thinker in general, but like when I do have a very good memory. And so like usually if I've seen something, I can remember it. And so if I do the work to sort of like, when I find things, sort of like do a little bit of work to sort of capture them in places like this, it's easy for me to sort of like figure out where they are and recall them. Otherwise they can sort of be lost, because like it gets harder and harder to find things. Over time, Google is becoming less useful.
Right. So then you're seeing these patterns. Are you physically writing them down? Are you writing them down in another, like a notepad or some sort of document, or are you just keeping them in your head?
I use the Notes app. Usually. And so I'll keep like running things, or like I'll, do subheadings for like, write about this. And
I can't wait to read. I hope this book comes someday. Rhonda,
the video game section. This is my favorite one.
Oh, I had Cubert. I didn't even remember it was Cooper Black. Oh my gosh. These are great. The video game. They're really fun. They're not where these instances where like you don't expect it. It's not like what you think of is really fun. And then thinking about like, okay, how did the usage of the typeface and who used the typeface and how change in the 80s, and relate that to like the change in the political environment in the US in the 80s. And like, everything became more corporatized, and like it became less about like corporate sort of subsumed the like aesthetic that was like in the 60s and 70s of like this, like, this was the hip typeface, and corporations like Cooper Tires and a lot of soda brands and McDonald's and all that start using it. It's in a lot of political posters in the 80s. And then you start seeing it used less in the artistic media. It like drops dramatically in album covers and things, because like they're wanting to react against this thing that like they used to own. And it's sort of like, it writes itself if you like do the work to like see everything and sort of like have this like wealth of data and information to look at. But that is, again, it's looking at and knowing the history, knowing that whole landscape of the time. You can't really just be pinpointed on one thing. You have to be able to come back and look at, hey, what was happening? I love that you pull that in and think about how things were changing. I mean, that's Prince using it. Wow, in 88. So Rhonda wanted to know.
I didn't even know that this album existed.
I didn't either.
Look at that.
I know. I guess Roger Nelson is his given name. Or maybe anyway, I didn't know that. That's this is great. But you have done a lot of research. At what point do you stop doing the collection? And I mean, you're putting down in Notepad some of the patterns that you're seeing and things that you'd like to say. Is that just the collection happens as this, you spend more time in these pages and looking and analyzing?
I find that like the sort of like stopping point is like, it can be driven by a lot of things. Like sometimes when you're working with somebody else, it's like, okay, we have a timeline, like we've got to go. Sometimes it's like I'm ready to stop sort of like being in this hunting mindset and more about like, okay, I want to like feel like I can sort of like put a bow on some of these things that I've found and draw connections and sort of like create the sort of like, what's the narrative that I want to find for this like particular aspect. And sometimes doing that writing like reveals things like, oh, I should look up things about like, and I'm still trying to track this down. Like, I want to know, like, why is it that like metal signage and vinyl signage, like that became like Cooper Black became like so in the, like, it's very different technologies. It's the same like general concept of like, they're both like large format signages, but like, why did they like, Cooper Black's not a simple typeface. Like, why did they feel like it was important to invest the time in those things? And so there's new avenues that sort of like, you can make the initial observation, but then it's like, okay, we'll is this one where it's like makes sense to go a level deeper, and like, should I try to interview somebody, like how, like how do I get the information and the resources to dive into this even deeper?
Yeah. I mean, how do you take it to that place of, hey, I need to interview some sign shop owners from the 80s? I mean, is that a normal route you would take to see how they were making decisions for their business? Or
I've done it in the past. I haven't gotten to that point with this project yet, because it's very big and I'm still like feeling out a bunch of things about it. But for Font Review Journal, yes, like there have been times where it's just like, I want to know like something about this typeface, and just trying to source somebody or a few people and ask questions and see who says yes and gives you a response that makes sense.
Okay, 2 questions. Rhonda said, can you put the album cover site, or can you spell Discogs? I have no idea, so I wrote that. I don't know if that's correct, but if you can tell me, I can type it.
I'm gonna type it in to make sure that I know. Yeah,
Okay. Yes. Okay, great. I'm gonna write it down so it'll go in the links at the bottom on the notes. So if you are looking for it, we can we'll get it for you. I don't remember if it was .org or .com, but
good question.
It's okay.
.com.
Okay, great. And then Jared said, where do you find all these images and data? Are they from all over, or do you have a search process?
They're from all over. So sometimes Pinterest is a sort of entry point, because Pinterest is sort of like watching me, and so it sort of knows like the types of things that I'm interested in. Some of it's on Instagram, some of it's on Arena, if I want to be in like a graphic design space, and see how like graphic designers. I don't even know what
Arena is. See, you teach me all this stuff. I feel like granted, I can say this and you aren't going to take offense to it because you grew up in Alabama, but sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, it hadn't gotten here. I live in Alabama. Okay, so what is Arena?
Arena is like it's ARE.NA, and it's like Pinterest for like Gen Z graphic designers.
Oh, that's why, because
it's the descriptor I would use that doesn't involve swear words, which is what I would normally describe it as. But
that's good, because my mom's still here in spirit.
Exactly. It is, but it's mostly graphic designers on there, and you can find all kinds of stuff.
But you like to go to flea markets or antique places. Yes. This isn't just like she's hanging out on the internet, she's out there finding some things just on your own. And it's
like this one I found at an antique store a few weekends ago, and like the signage and this one, those are all mine that I took. Yeah, I'm out looking at old things and weird things like constantly. And my favorite examples are the ones that I don't find at graphic design sites. There are things that I find where I'm just like, I want to look at like a rave poster archive and see what I can find, because rave is not the first genre of music that I would think of that I would find Cooper Black, but I have found Cooper Black examples in that archive. Yeah, the sort of going into like a Flickr album where it's like, oh, it's about, it's like shirt tags or old t-shirts or, like there's, do I have a good way of finding this? Let me see. I have so many tags in here. Do I have a transportation tag? I do not.
But you've been able to make these tags, right? You just go through and when you see it. So if you wanted to add a transportation tag, you could add it to this auto one that's next to the Diamond Cross Ranch or something, right? You would just be able to click on it and add a tag to it, I guess.
This is it. So like I heard of this concept of like jeepneys. And this is not the best picture, because I probably just grabbed this so I would remember that it was called a jeepney. But I was like, it's like it's something in the Philippines that where they're tour busy kind of thing. I apologize if I'm not describing this accurately. Oh, I did it because there's this sign right here that has Cooper Black. But I saw these things and I was like, I know that somebody's made some of these with Cooper Black on it. And so I went through like various Getty stock image sites, Flickr albums, like whatever it is, and I finally found some that have it. And so it's like low hits per like time spent in terms of like the number of things that you find, but it feels better when you do find them because you're sort of like going on a hunch.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's great. You've given us so much. Dylan Mingus said, thank you, Bethany. You helped me be a better designer. Gotta run. And so he loved it today. I just love that you are, I take pictures of a certain typeface because I don't like the typeface. But there is now this affinity towards that typeface. And it's hobo is the one that I don't like. But I kind of feel like it's like now I'm kind of like me and hobo, like it's there. I feel like I have so many pictures on my phone of hobo being used because hobo is used a lot on a lot of things. But it's anyway, I love how you think, and we didn't get to any of the questions, but okay, let me you answered a lot of great questions. So is there anything else about the Cooper project or about the articles that you write, or that feeds something for you that it is definitely very separate, right? You could keep it all in, but there is something that makes you want to share this. So what is that that draws you to share this and not just have these thoughts on your own?
I think a lot of it's just like growing up with a parent who was a teacher. I wanted to be a professor when I graduated, and I think if like one or two things had gone differently for me in my life, I would have just like gone and gotten a master's and come back to Auburn and been a different version of my dad. And I just got, for better or for worse, got seen very early and sort of had a lot of doors opened up to me through the work that I did as a student and soon after I left school, and got seen in a lot of places. And so, sort of like the scope of my possibilities changed. And so I find that the writing and sharing, I hope that it's sort of providing some of the value that I hoped that I would be able to provide as a teacher.
Oh my gosh.
And I mentioned it earlier, like I very much remember how frustrated I was in school, feeling misunderstood, feeling like, just sort of like not knowing how to process what it was and wasn't good. And like, when am I doing this just for the professor versus when is this like the right solution, and all those types of things, and sort of like struggling to understand the sort of formal decisions that I was sort of like being led to. And wanting to just, and also like being frustrated like early on about people sort of like looking at me and sort of saying like, oh, well, the work that she does is unconventional. And so it's just like, that's her thing. Nobody else should do this. This is bad practice. She can get away with it because, of whatever reason, but I hear that a lot. And so some of it's my own stubbornness of sort of being like, I don't think it's just me. I think that this is like something that other people can learn and take and use in their own way. And just wanting to see the practice of graphic design grow in terms of how we like talk to others about our own work and about other work, and sort of see a maturation of the discipline in that way.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I love that you share so easily and that you analyze. You make me want to be a better designer. And that's why I love having you on, because you're just terrific at that. So, and you are, I would love to work for you. I mean, I don't want to work. I mean, I'm happy. I don't want to get another job, but I'm just saying, I think that you would be a great person. I asked you, did you have anybody that you could mimic that did this to you, that taught you that? And I'm sure, there are people in your life that have done that at times, or things that you've seen, but you've also really forged ahead in a new way a newly labeled discipline of UX. And I think that I'm really glad that you have gotten to do, lead graphic design teams and lead the UX team. But I think you always have at the center what is successful for the user and the people, how they're reacting to it. Why were people using this? Why were people seeing this typeface in this way? And how do people see this typeface now? And maybe that's some of that conversation I need to have with myself about hobo. I kind of feel bad that I don't like hobo. I guess I just think it's overused. But I'll think about it, and then next time we can have a conversation about hobo, maybe. But I wanted to make sure. I don't know. People may like hobo. I'm just burned hobo, but I have this weird relationship with hobo now. So Thought Review Journal is a way that you can connect with Bethany. EFIS League is still a beautiful, beautiful site. And her favorite way to talk about design on a formal level is this Medium article. And then her website is heckhouse.com. Bethany, what is one thing in 10 years? So since the first time you were on in 2013, which seems like not that long ago, but then it also seems like a long time ago. What's one thing that you've learned about yourself that has been most impactful for you in your career as a designer or and a leader?
I think that learning to get over myself in that way, and sort of like learning to embrace the like interpersonal aspects of work, not just for myself and my own work and sort of seeing my own work through to the finish line, but learning to do that for other people. Like that's to me the biggest change from like when I started to when I finished. Like that. But back in 2013, I was in South Carolina working for a web design agency. And so my next job after that was moving to IBM, and sort of like that was my first time being in a really big pond, and getting to sort of like learn to navigate within the machinery of that. And I find that that's a way that that's another like element that I really have enjoyed being in. And it was very unnatural for me at first, being an introverted person, and being someone who's fiery with strong opinions about things, and sort of figuring out like, how do I keep the good of that while expressing it in a way that I hope is a lot more productive, and bringing other people along with me, rather than feeling like, oh, it has to be, like I have to be the person who's sort of shouldering this, and that's not a healthy way to work.
But I think that was, when you were at Auburn or in school, a lot of times we feel like I just have to do it this way to either get the passing grade, or because it doesn't rock the boat, and a lot of people feel like that in the beginnings of their career, and then they never kind of come out of that. So in a way, you've now created a place where people can be safe to explore when they're under you as you're their boss or their leader or the team lead or the project lead or whatever. Like you're doing more. You are mentoring others, even just by, even just through Thought Review Journal. Like it's helping us to move forward in our careers, but it's also you're creating a space that hopefully other people, because it's not just the design, it's the way you are UXing being a manager, or, like you're thinking about how, because I know one job I left because the guy just took all the things that I was designing because our creative director was controlling what he was doing too much. And so he didn't feel like he had any power. And that's kind of what it felt like maybe when we're stuck and we're having to only meet what the teacher likes, right? Some kid said to me this summer or the beginning of last spring, and he was like, well, I don't know, well, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, well, you have to tell me about the customer so that I can know if it's successful. It's not if Diane likes it, just don't use hobo, if you want to do something, I don't, right? But I think that it's not that you have to really think. And I think a lot of people think about design as just, oh, what do you like it and not? And I think you really have this really great package of that customer experience, And I think you do that as a manager. I think that would be difficult in a remote setting. But it sounds like you're a great team leader where you're managing a Zoom meeting so that people get their voice, because you didn't feel like your voice was heard. And I feel like you're like an advocate for that. And I just think that's great. It's just hard.
I can't speak to whether or not I'm successful, because I don't have me as a manager, but I can just speak to what my motivations are and what I'm trying to do. I hope that I'm successful.
Yeah, well, we're always trying to improve, and it stops when we stop trying to improve and think that we've got everything. So I'm going to rethink Hobo. And now I've got like all these things now to go in the arena. I put them in my show notes, Discogs. And then I did know about Letterform Archive. So I will put all of those show notes will be there. But again, guys, go follow Bethany. Jared says, you're super inspiring, Bethany. I've Bethany been affected. He said, I've definitely been affected by your work. Thank you for sharing today. Paul said, great insights, great tips. And I agree. Bethany, you just are a wealth of information and you just share so easy. I'm really glad you're my friend. And thank you for being willing to swap our dates, which I think was really funny. It was 0315. We still use the same numbers. It's now 0531, which I thought was kind of weird, but we end up being on the same number. I don't know. 3 and 5 are two of my favorite numbers because I love the way they look together. They're kind of, so like that's always my favorite number. So you had my favorite numbers either in March or if it was here. So Bethany, thank you. I can't wait. Hopefully it won't be 10 years till I have you back on, but thank you. Thank you. And next week, I believe we have Alicia Cologne on, and she is doing something new as well. She has also been through multiple different jobs and done paper arts and photography and project management. And so we'll hear from her next week. But Bethany, thank you so much. And if you're listening on YouTube, you can give us a thumb. Give us a thumb. I guess you could give us a thumb either way. But we'd love a thumbs up, and I'd love a comment. I do respond back to them. So I really appreciate you, Bethany, and I appreciate everybody who comes live. So thank you. And Bethany, I will see you soon. And next time you're in Alabama, I would love to pop up to Auburn and see you. So anyway, we will see you guys next week.
Thank you all so much.